friends, my name is Naomi. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of 2022. So I think I said this last year, but this does not mean that these books came out in 2022. It just means that I read them in 2022. I do have some books on here that are newer releases that did come out this year, but not all of them are. So I have about 11 favorite books of the year, and then I did have 2 honorable mentions. I just couldn't leave these books out. So yeah, let's just get started. So like I said, I have 2 honorable mentions. And the first one is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. I wanted to add this one because as I'm looking at my stack, I don't have any middle grade, and I wanted to point out that this was the year that I started reading more middle grade. I read a lot at the beginning of the year. I think during the winter time my mood reading just said read middle grade, so that's what I did, and this was probably my favorite middle grade. And this one pretty much follows this young girl, and they are in this village that basically every year or so they kind of sacrifice a child to this witch because they believe that that is the only way that this witch will leave them alone. But basically, in the witch's point of view, she doesn't understand why these people are just abandoning children in the middle of the forest. So she, obviously our main character, is one of the sacrifices, and our witch eats her moonlight and that gives her powers. So that is where the story goes from there. This is probably one of my favorite middle grades of the year, obviously, and I had to mention this in this video. So the next honorable mention, I just finished this, is the last book that I read, and that is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. Really loved this. I heard so many people saying how funny this was and that this was a historical fiction, very feminist. This one follows our main character, and she is a chemist in the 1960s, so you can only imagine. But I'd heard so many things about this book being so funny, and it was, but then as I am driving home and listening to this audiobook, I am crying. Nobody told me that this book was sad, and it was. I was sobbing, and I feel like this is one of the few books this year that made me cry. And I really loved this one, and you should totally read this and give it a try. Alrighty, on to the official list. So coming in at number 11, I have Finley Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano. Had this on my TBR for the longest time. Finally read it in 2022. If you don't know, this book follows Finley Donovan, and she is a writer, and she is a single mom, and she is struggling, and she's basically telling her publicist about the story that she has in mind about a contract killer, and then someone overhears her in this like restaurant, and they think that she's a contract killer, and the story goes from there, and it's so funny. I haven't read the sequel yet, but I will probably be doing that in the new year. Alrighty, coming in at number 10, I have The It Girl by Ruth Ware. Love this one. This is a dark academia mystery thriller type of story, and if you don't know, Ruth Ware has written a whole bunch of other mystery thrillers. My favorite one by her so far is The Turn of the Key, but like I said, this one is dark academia, and it follows this woman who goes, I believe, which school was it? She goes to Oxford, and our main character, her name's Hannah, and basically this has a dual timeline. It follows them when they are in college, and then also many, like, a decade later or so, and basically her best friend April, who is kind of like the it girl in school, she dies, and she put this man in jail because she believed that was the person who killed her, and then many years later the person that was committed for April's murder dies in prison, and then she's kind of questioning whether or not that was the person who actually killed her best friend. Love this book. This book has a lot of twists and turns, and it's really original for a mystery thriller. I did not see the twist coming at the end, so pick it up and you'll love it. Coming in at number 9, I have a cozy mystery, and that is Death in Castle Dark by Veronica Vaughn. Similar to the middle grade, this was the year that I picked up cozy mystery, and I thought that I would hate it, and I love it. I've been reading one like a month now, and this is probably my favorite one of the year from the genre. I feel like cozy mystery is like it's so much about the setting or like a specific theme in the book. Like I read this one and I also loved In the Company of Witches, and that one, like the main theme is like witchery, and I read it in October and it was great. And this one, Death in Castle Dark, is pretty much about this woman, and she's an actress and she's going to this castle where they host like murder mystery dinners, and they have a whole bunch of actors and they reenact like a murder and make it fun. And it's like a dinner where people go and they pay and they stay at this place, and it's really, really cool. And I feel like that was such a unique and original like theme for a cozy mystery, because I've read so many and a lot of them are about food, and I feel like this one was really, really different from all the other cozy mysteries that I've read. And I really love this one, and yeah. Coming in at number 8, I have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Never thought that I'd put an Emily Henry book on a favorite books of the year, but I guess this one was the one for me. There is an Emily Henry for everyone, and Book Lovers was the one for me. This one follows a woman that works in the publishing industry, and she is so passionate about her job that she kind of like neglects everything else, and she has a really close relationship with her sister, and her sister pretty much tells her like, let's go to this small Hallmark-ish type of town, and they have like a list of things that they need to do. And there she sees again someone that she already knows from her past, Mr. Charlie, who also works in the publishing industry. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful book. I loved it. I think I loved it more because of the sister relationship rather than the actual romance, and that's probably why I don't love Emily Henry books so much, but this one did it for me because of the sister relationship and also like the Hallmark vibes of it because of the little town. So yeah, I really love this one, and it's a really, really good romance. Next up, I have my first favorite book of the year. I knew this was the first one that I read this year that became a favorite, and that is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This is a fantasy, and this is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. Loved it. I need to read more by Naomi Novik. I have Uprooted somewhere in my room. Haven't read it yet, but I feel like I read this at the perfect time during winter. This one follows a lot of really strong, complex female characters, which is why I loved it the most. And there is a really, really unexpected romance in here that I loved as well. So yeah, if you're looking for a really cool fantasy this winter, please read this one. It's so good. The next one took me by surprise, and coming in at number 6 is The Honeys by Ryan Lasala. Love this one, and this is a horror, young adult horror book, and this one was compared to Midsommar, and this is set in a summer camp. And basically at the beginning of this book you see our main character, whose name I already forgot. So our main character, his name is Mars, and he is gender fluid. They do use he, him pronouns on the description, so that is what I'll be using while I'm talking about this book. But basically we follow Mars, and at the very beginning of the book we see his sister. I can't remember, she is like attacking them, and I believe she either like kills herself or like someone defending themselves kills her. So basically we see that Mars is grieving his sister's death. They were very, very close, and every summer his sister would go to this camp, and he has a feeling that this group of girls called the Honeys at the summer camp had something to do with his sister's murder. This one, you have to go in with the mindset that this is very Midsommar, very weird. It's kind of like what is going on type of book, but it's a little bit more mild than like a Mona A. Wad type of book, because that one's like you don't know what the heck's going on. This one's a little bit more mild, more tame. But yeah, I really loved it, and I feel like I don't really love like adult horror, but like young adult horror, like I'll read it any day of the week, and this one was it for me. So if that's how you are as well, read The Honeys next summer. It was really a vibe. Coming in at number 5, I have another young adult book, and that is Ophelia After All by Raquel Marie. Like I said, this is a young adult, and this is a coming of age story that follows Ophelia. And Ophelia, she loves flowers, she has her own garden, and she has this really, really cool friend group at school, and she is starting to question her sexuality, and from that a lot of things kind of start happening in her life, and she just starts to question a lot of things in her life. you see this inner dialogue that she has with herself about how everyone has this mindset of thinking of knowing who she is, and she wants to go outside of that, but she's so scared. So it's literally just a coming of age story of this young girl and figuring out like bisexuality and what all of that means, and having a really cool friend group. If you love Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, I feel like you'd love this book as well. And yeah, I just loved it. It was really cool, and there's a lot of representation in this book, so yeah. Alrighty, coming in at number 4. I don't even know what genre to say this is, but I have Cackle by Rachel Harrison. This book is another one that took me by surprise. I thought this was going to be an okay book. I read this in October, which I will say that is the perfect time to read this book, is October. So this one follows Annie, and she's a teacher. She just got dumped, and then she moves to this like small village in upstate Manhattan. And she goes there, and it's a really cute town. Everyone's super nice, and then she meets Sophie. I'm sorry, I forgot like their names. And she meets Sophie, who is this big character, and Annie starts noticing that all of the townspeople kind of have something with Sophie. They don't really trust her, or like they look at her weird. But this one, it like that is the surface level, but you can definitely see from the cover of this book that is witchy, and there's something more going on in there. And you know, if you listen to Taylor Swift at all, Karma by Taylor Swift and also Vigilante shit like sum up this book perfectly. This book has a lot to do with feminism, and it's kind of obvious but also very low-key, and I feel like it was just so well done. And basically Sophie is just kind of teaching our main character just to like stop apologizing for yourself, and kind of teaching her womanhood in ways. But yeah, I loved it. This is a very powerful, I felt like a bad bitch after reading this book, and yeah, I really loved it. Next up, coming in at number 3, I have another romance, which if you know me, you know that I don't love romance very much, and I was debating on having this one as number 1, but there was a couple other books that I read that were just competing for the number 1 spot, so I couldn't put it up there. But I have Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I've had a couple of my IRL friends read this book. My friend Jess loved it, another friend Sarah on Bookstagram and IRL loved this book as well, and this one, it's just the romance for me. This is like someone picked all of the things that Naomi would love in a romance and just wrote it for me, just specifically for me. I love this book. Oh my god, why am I so bad at remembering main characters' names? Okay, Alexis. So this one follows our city girl, Alexis, and she has a career in medicine, and she's going through a really bad breakup because it was an abusive relationship, and she's going through that, and I believe she's going to a funeral. I can't remember now. But she's going somewhere, and she ends up in this small town, and she meets this guy, and there is a little bit of an age gap. She's the older one in the relationship, and it's just so funny, and it's kind of like worlds collide type of story. Like, obviously small town boy, city girl, but it was just so good, and I could just see this all like playing as a movie in my head. And it was just such a perfect rom-com type of book, and I really loved it. And yeah, if you're reading any romance next year in February, make it this one. Alright, I have my last 2, which are both literary fiction, and I'm really excited about that. I began to notice that this year a lot of my favorites were literary fiction type of books that had to do with family and really complicated relationships, which is something that I'm enjoying, that I'm learning right now, so I can explore more in 2023. So coming in at number 2, I have Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkinson. Love this book so much. This one follows these 2 siblings, and their mother just passed away, and in her inheritance she leaves this black cake, and she leaves all of these voicemails that they have to listen to, and pretty much all of these voicemails kind of tell the story of their mother's life, and their mother's life had a life. If you're looking for something like Evelyn Hugo-esque, where you follow a character through many years of their life, and they have like this epic big life and romance and just everything. It's in this book. And also the sibling relationship in this book and that dynamic, it was just chef's kiss. Loved it, and you should read this book because it was really good. And it's also like historical fiction-ish because they go back in time to when their mother was like a child, like a teenager, and this is a crazy book. Alrighty, last but not least, I feel like a lot of people won't be very surprised about this one, but coming in at number 1 is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Listen, I know that this book is very sad, but knowing now that I just really love literary fiction and books that really just tug at my heartstrings and very in-depth characters, this was the one for me this year. This one has a lot of memories attached to it as well. Going into this book, I read the description, but I didn't know that this book was partly set in Boston. And I went on my first solo trip this year to Boston, Massachusetts, and I went to Martha's Vineyard, and I read this book while I was down there. On the first 2 days that I was down there, I started and finished this book, and that also holds a very special place in my heart. I feel like those things too. I feel like Black Cake could have been like number 1, but the fact that I had these memories attached to it, like that also plays into like how much of a favorite a book is. So yeah, what is this book about? So basically this one follows these 2 young people whose names I don't remember, Sam and Sadie, and they meet at a hospital. I remember the reason why, but I won't say too much. But they meet at a hospital and they become friends. And basically people told me about this book and they told me it was about these 2 friends making video games, I instantly assumed that it was like the boy who was really interested in making video games, and then the girl just kind of tags along and learns. But it was kind of the other way around. The boy, I mean, boys love playing video games, but the boy loved playing video games and he kind of helped throughout the process. But our main character Sadie is the one who knows all of this stuff about video games that I learned so much about that I had no idea. This writer, Gabrielle Zevin, had to do so much research because I honestly had no clue about any of these things that you have to do to make a video game. And obviously you would think that Sam and Sadie are gonna fall in love, and you know, there is a dynamic there, there's a relationship there. They've known each other for very long. Obviously both of them have their own separate relationships throughout life, and there's always kind of like the platonic thing going on and will they, won't they type of thing. They're very sad things that happen in this book. We obviously explore both of their families, and I really loved this book, and the fact that it had the background of this video game and how they kind of rise into fame, and I just really loved it. But yeah, those were, oh, my whole stack of books just fell. But yeah, those were my favorite books of 2022. I hope that you enjoyed, and this is probably my last video for the year of 2022. So thank you so much for being around. Thank you for getting me to 2K subs this year. I really truly appreciate it. It means a lot. And yeah, thank you so much for watching and being here and everything, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.